There is a voice inside every man that says, "Hold on tighter." But I tell you tonight, there is a greater strength in letting go, not to lose her, but to find yourself. There comes a time in a man's life when he must stop begging to be seen and start becoming the kind of man who cannot be ignored. If you are tired of the games, tired of chasing, tired of confusion, this message is for you. You have been taught to win her with effort, but let me ask you, where has all that effort led you? I urge you to listen not only with your ears, but with your soul, because what I'm about to tell you can shift the way you walk, think, and live. You don't chase a woman into love. You walk in purpose and love finds you. You don't prove your worth to her, you walk in it. There's a difference between ignoring to manipulate and ignoring to elevate. I'm not asking you to be careless or cruel. I'm calling you to be wise. You've texted back too fast, you've explained yourself too much, and you've made her your mission instead of your mirror. But once you pull back, not out of revenge, but out of revelation, something changes. You're no longer waiting by the phone. You're no longer adjusting your value based on her attention. You become the man whose energy speaks in your silence. And that silence echoes louder than any desperate word ever could. She will feel your absence, but not because you're punishing her, because you're purifying yourself. You are finally placing your identity above her approval. And when she sees that shift, when she senses that your attention is no longer a guarantee, she will chase what she thought she had forever. That's the power of sacred detachment, not distance, but divine discipline. You're not just learning to ignore her, you're learning to ignore. Every voice that told you love requires surrendering your dignity. You're learning to ignore the impulse to beg, the fear of loss, and the lies that say your value is measured by how often she replies. There is a man inside of you that God did not create to crawl. He was born to walk upright, with purpose, with peace, with patience. And it is that man, not the chaser, that draws her in dots. So tonight, I challenge you, not to be cold, but to be calm, not to withdraw out of bitterness, but to rise in boldness. If you can learn to ignore her in strength, she will not only notice, she will pursue. Not because she's been manipulated, but because she finally saw something worth running after. And that something is you. Absolutely. Here's the expanded keynote 1. The power of silence over desperation in 500 plus words, written in the deeply emotional, soul-stirring, and conviction-filled style inspired by Billy Graham, without any subheadings or ending sentence. In a world filled with noise, where men scramble to be heard, where text after text is sent in panic and calls go unanswered, there lies a sacred and often forgotten truth. Silence is not weakness. It is not the mark of a man who has given up, but of a man who has grown up. When a woman begins to pull away, when she starts responding with indifference, when her presence becomes sporadic and her warmth turns to cold, the natural instinct of most men is to chase, to speak louder, to cling tighter. But the divine truth is this: the more you chase, the more she runs. Not because she does not care, but because she no longer sees you as something to reach for. You have made yourself too available, too desperate, too willing to surrender your soul for her attention. And the tragedy is that many men confuse love with pursuit. They believe proving their love means proving themselves, forgetting that real love never requires you to lose yourself to win someone else. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, becomes more powerful than 1,000 declarations of affection. It forces reflection. It invites curiosity. It commands respect. A man who knows how to sit in silence, not with resentment, but with restraint, communicates something most words never could. I am enough without you. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is the moment a man stops negotiating with someone else's uncertainty and begins negotiating with his own calling. You see, When you are constantly seeking her attention, you are giving her the power to define your worth. And if you let her define it, you will forever chase her approval. But when you become silent intentionally, prayerfully, peacefully, you shift the dynamic. You are no longer the echo. You become the voice. And what happens then? She begins to notice. She begins to wonder. She begins to ask questions she once silenced with your constant reassurance. Why has he stopped calling? Why doesn't he care like before? Who has his attention? Now? And though you said nothing, your silence speaks volumes. It says, I am not going to fight for a place you are unsure I belong. It says, I will not lower myself to be noticed. It says, I am a man of value, not validation. And she will feel it not just emotionally, but spiritually. Because deep down, every woman craves a man who knows how to lead himself. Before he tries to lead her, she does not want a servant of insecurity. She desires a steward of strength. The power of silence is not about punishing her. It is about protecting your peace, preserving your purpose, and projecting your power without ever needing to say a word. There's a dangerous confusion growing in the hearts of men today. A confusion that tells them to become stone-hearted, cold, distant, to shut down completely as a way of gaining control. And that, my friend, is not power. That is pain disguised as protection. That is not strength, it is shut down. You were not created to be emotionally unavailable. You were created to walk with emotional wisdom. And wisdom teaches that being unbothered is not the same as being unavailable. You don't need to freeze your heart to prove your worth. You need to center it. Because let me tell you, a man who is emotionally unavailable is just a man who's hiding, afraid to feel, afraid to be seen, afraid to be rejected. But a man who is emotionally unbothered, he is not afraid. He's just not chasing after what doesn't choose him. He has learned to stand firm in who he is, even when the world around him shifts. She will test you. Not because she is evil, not because she doesn't care, but because somewhere deep inside, she wants to know if you are rooted. If you'll lose your grip every time she pulls away. If your sense of self is built on her validation or on something greater. And here's where many men fail. They panic. They over-explain. They over-apologize. They tried to fix what was never broken in the first place, themselves. And what happens? She grows colder. Why? Because she no longer feels the presence of a man who is steady. She feels the tremble of a man who is reactive. But the moment you choose calm over chaos, peace over panic, and self-respect over self-sacrifice, you separate yourself. You rise. You become the kind of man that she doesn't just want to talk to. She needs to understand. Emotional unavailability says, I won't feel anything. But emotional strength says, I feel it, and I still stand tall. She doesn't fall in love with your numbness. She falls for your composure. She is drawn to your centeredness, your stillness, your quiet assurance that you are not moved by her distance. That kind of energy, my friend, is not found in the one who chases, it is found in the one who remains. You do not need to ghost her, manipulate her, or try to teach her a lesson. You simply need to demonstrate with every breath you take that your heart is not for sale, not on edge, and not in her control. You are a man, and a true man leads his emotions. He does not let them lead him. You must learn to stop begging for reassurance and start becoming the reassurance. Because the more grounded you are in yourself, the more she begins to question the very thing she thought she could walk away from. And in that question, in that shift and that stillness, she begins to chase not because you forced her to, but because your presence showed her what she was about to lose. There comes a point in every man's life when he has to make a decision. Will he keep seeking approval, affection, and attention from a woman who treats his presence like an option, or will he finally stand in the quiet power of who he truly is? Too many men have been conditioned to believe that love must be earned by effort alone. They keep showing up, overcompensating, proving, explaining, and pouring themselves out like an offering, hoping that just one more gesture will change her heart. But love that demands you to prove yourself constantly is not love, it's bondage. It's time for you to rise above the pattern of pursuit and enter into the posture of presence. Stop seeking her and start standing in the truth of your own value. Because the man who always runs after her will never give her the chance to run after him. Every time you seek a woman more than you seek your purpose, you lower your spiritual authority. Your confidence was not meant to be built on her approval. Your identity was not designed to hang on her response. There is something inside of you, a divine calling, that was placed there long before she ever entered your life. And yet, you have allowed her affection or the lack of it to become your compass. You rise when she responds. You fall when she pulls away. And all the while, your purpose is waiting. Your vision is waiting. Your manhood is waiting. But you cannot become who you were called to be while constantly reaching for someone who isn't reaching back. You were not made to chase validation. You were made to command it through how you walk, how you carry yourself, and how unshakable you are when attention is no longer guaranteed. A woman doesn't want to feel that your world falls apart when she becomes distant. She wants to feel the power of a man who continues building, growing, and leading even when she doesn't understand him. That kind of man is attractive. That kind of man is rare. That kind of man is unforgettable. So don't just step back physically, stand tall emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Let your silence be filled with purpose. Let your distance be filled with growth. Let your posture say what your words never could. I don't need to. Chase what I carry within me. When a man stops seeking and starts standing, everything around him shifts. She begins to notice. She begins to reflect. She begins to feel something she didn't feel before: uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, you regain your power. Not by manipulation, not by revenge, but by presence. A man who stands still in truth will draw in more than the man who runs in fear. There's something most men don't realize. Until it's too late, your attention is a currency. And just like any currency, it can be spent, wasted, or invested. But when you give it away freely to someone who hasn't earned it, it loses its value. Many of you are bankrupt emotionally not because you love too much, but because you gave too much attention to someone who didn't treasure it. You poured out your time, your energy, your mind, your emotions, all in hopes that she would finally see your worth. But let me ask you, how can someone see your value when you've placed yourself on clearance? She doesn't feel the need to chase what is constantly available. She doesn't feel the mystery, the hunger, the wonder, because you've turned yourself into background noise when you were created to be a voice of strength. Every text, every call, every moment of desperate reach teaches her something. It teaches her that she doesn't have to give much to receive everything. It teaches her that your attention is cheap, that she can disappear and return and you'll still be waiting. And over time, she begins to lose respect. Not because she's cruel, but because she's wired to respond to a man who values himself first. You can't be a king begging for crumbs and expect her to treat you like royalty. She's not watching your words, she's watching your discipline. She's watching whether your focus can be shifted by her silence. And when you begin to invest your attention not in her every mood, but in your growth, in your purpose, in your mission, that's when she'll feel the shift. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you to withdraw to punish her. I'm telling you to redirect your energy so you can preserve your soul. Just as money multiplies when invested wisely, attention becomes powerful when placed in the right hands. When you give too much too soon, you rob her of the ability to miss you. She needs to wonder. She needs to feel the space where your attention once was, That's what awakens desire. That's what stirs curiosity. That's what makes her stop and say, "Where? Did he go?" And when she does, it won't be because you manipulated her, it will be because you matured. Because you stopped living off reaction and started living off revelation. You were not created to beg. You were created to build. So invest your attention in the things that build your spirit, strengthen your mind, sharpen your vision. Let her chase the man who doesn't need her to feel complete, but chooses her from a place of wholeness. That's the kind of man she won't just want for a moment, but will fight to keep for a lifetime. We live in an age where noise is mistaken for confidence, where loud men scream for attention, post their emotions, beg for responses, and call it honesty. But true confidence does not shout. It does not plead. It does not push to be seen. Real confidence is silent. It moves in stillness. It walks into a room and the energy shifts, not because the man is loud, but because his spirit is anchored. You see, the kind of man who knows who he is doesn't have to announce it. He doesn't have to explain his worth or argue for his place in someone's life. He doesn't panic when she pulls away. He doesn't beg when the attention fades. He knows that what is truly meant for him will feel his absence before it even understands his presence. When you become that kind of man, she senses it. Not in the words you say, but in the way you carry yourself. There's no more chasing, no more convincing, no more proving. You're not trying to win her, you're focused on becoming the kind of man that can't be ignored. That's what confidence is. It's not pretending you don't care. It's knowing that you'll be just fine whether she stays or goes. That quiet certainty echoes louder than any desperate message or emotional plea. Because when a woman sees a man who can stand still when everything around him is uncertain, something inside her awakens. She starts to wonder what makes him so steady, so unshaken, so calm. And that wonder leads her back toward the very thing she thought she could walk away from. You don't have to raise your voice when you have a strong foundation. You don't have to send 5 messages in a row just to feel seen. You don't have to explain your silence when it is rooted in purpose. She will feel it. Your confidence will echo in the places your words never reached. It will speak when you're quiet. It will linger when you've left. That kind of power is not built in the gym or in the mirror. It's built in the furnace of solitude, discipline, and surrender. It's built in the moments when you choose not to react. When you feel rejected, but you rise anyway. When you're misunderstood, but you don't chase clarity. When you're doubted, but you still walk forward. That's where confidence is forged. Not on the mountaintop, but in the valley dot, and when she sees you standing like that, not angry, not cold, not indifferent, but full of quiet power, she won't just notice. She'd be drawn in. Because every woman wants to feel the gravity of a man who doesn't need her to breathe, but who, in his stillness, takes her breath away. That's not arrogance. That's confidence clothed in humility, forged in patience. And echoed through presence. There is a vast difference between neglect and strategy, between indifference and intentionality. Some men think that ignoring a woman means cutting her off, being cold, acting detached, or withholding affection to gain the upper hand. But that is not strength, that is immaturity dressed in pride. Ignoring her the right way is not about turning your back on her, it's about turning your face toward your future. You're not ghosting her to hurt her, you're grounding yourself to heal. You're not trying to manipulate her mind, you're trying to master your own emotions. Because when a man has been ignored, disrespected, or placed on the back burner, there comes a holy moment when he must decide whether he will keep feeding a connection that depletes him, or finally walk in the discipline that protects his value. Ignoring her the right way means choosing distance not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. It is saying without words, I am no longer available to anything that confuses my spirit or clouds my mission. This is not you cutting her off. It's You cutting off the parts of yourself that used to beg for love, for texts, for late-night attention, for breadcrumbs of affection. You are no longer performing. You are positioning. You are no longer waiting. You are walking. And when you walk with that kind of quiet strength, you shift the energy in the entire relationship. She begins to feel the void your presence once filled. She begins to notice that something is missing, not just your words or attention, but your essence. She starts to sense what she once took for granted. And the truth is, women do not chase the man who pulls away out of revenge. They chase the man who pulls away because he's being refined. Because that man becomes rare. He becomes respected. He becomes magnetic. Ignoring her the right way means you are no longer trying to convince her that you're worthy. You are reminding yourself that you were never meant to settle for being an afterthought. You are no longer sending long explanations, emotional paragraphs, or chasing closure. Because you don't need her permission to choose peace. You don't need her reply to walk in power. She will feel the shift when you redirect the attention you gave her into building your purpose. When you shift the affection you poured out into developing your character. That's not neglect. It's leadership. That's not being distant, it's being decisive. And if she truly values you, she will come searching not because you pulled away to get attention, but because your absence revealed how powerful your presence really was. A man who learns to ignore with wisdom, who walks away in peace and not in pride, becomes the very kind of man she cannot forget. Not because he punished her, but because he elevated himself without saying a single word. So now you've heard the truth, not the watered-down advice of games and manipulation, but the wisdom of restraint, of alignment, of masculine leadership. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are that you no longer feel the need to chase what isn't choosing you. You don't have to yell. You don't have to beg. You don't have to shrink yourself to be seen. What you need is silence filled with strength, space filled with purpose, and detachment filled with dignity. When you ignore her the right way, you're not punishing her, you're prioritizing yourself. You're not turning your back in anger, you're walking forward in power. And in that moment of calm, collected distance, you will begin to feel something she never gave you, your own value echoing back to you. And let me tell you this, when a woman feels the absence of a man who once gave her everything freely, she will begin to see him differently. Not because he forced her to, but because his silence revealed what his words never could. He was rare. And now that she senses his worth, now that she feels the shift, she starts to reach. She starts to miss. She starts to chase. But by then, you're no longer the man who is waiting. You are the man who is growing. And she doesn't chase you because she was manipulated. She chases because she finally sees. That is the reward of ignoring her the right way. So I leave you with this. You are not here to convince anyone to love you. You are here to become the kind of man who loves himself so deeply, so completely, that anyone who fails to honor your presence will eventually feel the weight of your absence. And when you master that, when you embody that, you will no longer chase. Because the right ones will be drawn to the power that no longer needs to prove itself. And that power, my brother, is already inside of you. God bless you. Walk strong. Stand tall, and may your silence speak louder than the words you used to waste.